It is the final day of the 40th year in the desert, and a 120-year-old man is walking up the jagged limestone ridge of Mount Nebo alone. Below him, on the plains of Moab, 2 million men, women, and children stand in absolute silence, watching his back disappear into the crags. Picture the scene. He is not sick. He is not stumbling. The text is obsessive about his physical condition. Deuteronomy will tell us, his eye was not dim, nor his natural force abated. He is a man in possession of perfect, terrifying vitality, walking under his own power to his own funeral. But he is not just walking to die. He is walking into an extraction. A vanishing act so complete that for thousands of years, the final resting place of the greatest prophet in Israel's history has remained a total, guarded secret. The mystery is not that he died on the mountain. The mystery is what happened to his physical body after his lungs stopped pulling in the thin desert air. Stop right there. Watch what the canonical text does. In Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 1, the King James Version reads, "And Moses went up from the plains of Moab unto the mountain of Nebo, to the top of Pisgah that is over against Jericho. The Lord shows him the sweeping expanse of the promised land, the land he is forbidden to enter." Then comes verse 5. "So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord." But it is the verse that follows, verse 6, that tears open a crack in the historical record. And it is a crack that an ancient Jewish writing known as the Assumption of Moses, a text preserved from the 1st century, that we will pry open shortly, warns us is much darker and far more violent than a simple burial. Think about the sheer isolation of this moment. In the ancient Near East, patriarchs did not die alone. Abraham was gathered to his people and buried by his sons in a known cave. Jacob was surrounded by his 12 sons, embalmed for 40 days, and carried with a massive Egyptian procession back to Canaan. Even Aaron, Moses' own brother, died on Mount Hor with Eleazar, and Moses standing right beside him. Not Moses. See it. He leaves the priests behind. He leaves Joshua, his commander. He leaves the entire congregation. He climbs up into the desolate peaks of the Abarim range, entirely unaccompanied. No witnesses, no embalmers, no mourning procession. Just a man, a mountain, and the Creator. When the breath finally leaves his body, the text records a detail that English translations struggle to capture. The King James says he died according to the word of the Lord. But turn that English back into the Hebrew it was translated from. The phrase is al-pi YHWH, literally, upon the mouth of the Lord. Ancient Jewish rabbis leaned into this bizarre phrasing for centuries. Their tradition, which I hold as their telling and not as proven fact, insists that Moses did not die of old age or organ failure. He died by the kiss of God. His soul was drawn out gently by the divine breath. Sit with that. The greatest prophet of the Torah breathes his last on a barren ridge, wrapped in complete silence. A peaceful, holy end. But a corpse is still a physical object. A dead body still has weight, and flesh still requires a grave in the dirt. A man walks up a mountain alone and dies in the unseen presence of the divine. But the Hebrew pronoun in the very next verse shifts in a way that shatters every expectation of a normal funeral. Who, exactly, put the physical body of Moses into the ground? The body is lying in the dust of the Abarim peaks. A man who split the sea, called down fire, and collapsed an empire, is now just lifeless weight, flesh and bone. Someone has to deal with the remains. Someone has to dig the grave. Watch what the text does. Deuteronomy 34, 6 inches, the King James reads, "And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, over against Beth Peor." but no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. Stop right there. Look at that first pronoun. And he buried him, who is the gravedigger. In Hebrew, the verb is wayik bor. It is third-person masculine singular. The subject of the preceding verse, the one who spoke the word, the one who took the breath, is YHWH, the Lord. There are no other actors on the mountain. There are no priests, no sons, no mourners. Read that again. The creator of the cosmos acts as a solitary undertaker. This is the only time in the entire biblical record where God physically buries a human being. He does not delegate the task. He does not leave the body to the elements. He handles the prophet's physical corpse himself. But trace the geography. He died on the top of Pisgah, yet the text says he was buried in a valley in the land of Moab, over against Bethpeor. Same mountain range, different elevation. The physical body of Moses had to be moved. It had to be carried down the jagged limestone ridges to a hidden ravine. Ancient Jewish scribes wrestled with the terrifying intimacy of this moment. They struggled with the image of the Almighty working the dirt of Moab. In the Targum Pseudo-Jonathan, an ancient Aramaic translation and expansion of the Torah, the rabbis added supernatural reinforcements to soften the shock. I offer it as that one tradition's record. The Targum claims that 4 archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Metatron, and Jophiel, descended to prepare the burial bed. While the glory of the Lord overshadowed the valley, they could not fathom the Lord acting alone. But the canonical Hebrew refuses that comfort. The canonical text keeps it isolated. One God, one body, one unmarked grave. And then comes the final lock on the door. But no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. Total erasure. The grave is not just unmarked, it is supernaturally hidden. The Israelites are mourning on the plains below for 30 days, but they are forbidden to climb the mountain to retrieve the bones of their deliverer. God has claimed the physical body of Moses, and he has permanently wiped its coordinates from the map. Picture it. 2 million people holding a funeral without a casket. Why this level of extreme, unprecedented secrecy? Heaven did not hide the bones of Joseph. Heaven did not hide the cave of Abraham. Those tombs became monuments. Yet the greatest prophet of the Old Covenant is stripped of any earthly memorial, buried in the dark, hidden by the hand of God himself. The greatest relic of the Exodus was buried by divine hands and erased from the map. To understand why heaven had to hide the flesh, we have to look at what the congregation below was already doing with the holy objects they could touch. What dark hunger was waiting down in the camp, desperate for a shrine? It is 700 years after the silence on Mount Nebo, inside the stone courtyards of Jerusalem. A king named Hezekiah is tearing through the holy places, hunting down a physical artifact that has become a dark obsession for the people of Judah. The object he is looking for is ancient, heavy, and forged by the hands of Moses himself. Picture the scene. Hezekiah finds the artifact, raises a weapon, and shatters it into pieces. Watch what the canonical text does in 2 Kings, chapter 18, verse 4. The King James reads, "He removed the high places and brake the images and cut down the groves and brake in pieces the brazen serpent that Moses had made. For unto those days the children of Israel did burn incense to it, and he called it Nehushtan." Stop right there. This was the bronze serpent from the deep wilderness, the very object God commanded Moses to lift up on a pole in Numbers 21 to save the wandering tribes from venomous bites. But look at what the human heart did to a holy relic over the centuries. The Israelites kept it. They carried it across the Jordan River, dragged it through the bloody era of the judges, and housed it securely in the kingdom of David. They turned an instrument of divine deliverance into a pagan idol. Hezekiah calls it Nehushtan. In Hebrew, the word is a mocking diminutive. It means simply a piece of brass. Hold that image. Now, carry that dark human tendency backward in time, back to the dusty plains of Moab at the base of Mount Nebo. 2 million people are waiting for a 120-year-old man to come down. This is the exact same congregation that, 40 years earlier at the base of Mount Sinai, panicked when Moses vanished into the thunderhead. What did they do? They stripped off their gold earrings and forged a calf before the ashes of the mountain were even cold. Same desert, same name. If they worshipped a piece of hammered bronze, if they worshipped a golden calf, the very moment their lawgiver was out of sight, what would they do with the physical bones of the man who called down plagues and split the Red Sea? They would have built a necrotic shrine. The tomb of Moses would have become the ultimate snare. It would have evolved into a pilgrimage site of flesh worship, rivaling the darkest pagan cults of Canaan. The Israelites would have prayed to the bones instead of the God who made them. Reading, not inventing. To protect the deliverer's legacy, the Creator had to become the concealer. The flesh had to be removed from the board entirely. God buried Moses in utter secrecy, sealing the location to protect a fragile nation from the intoxicating pull of their own prophet's remains. This is the earthly reason for the unmarked grave. But an earthly reason is only half the picture, because hiding the physical body from the eyes of Israel did not stop a much older, darker entity from hunting for the remains on that mountain. What happens when the New Testament suddenly shatters the silence of Nebo, pulling back the veil on a violent, unseen war for the corpse? It is the 1st century, 1500 years after the silence on Mount Nebo. A man named Jude, the half-brother of Jesus Christ, sits over a single sheet of parchment. He is writing a furious warning about dark infiltrators slipping into the early church, men who reject authority and speak evil of spiritual forces. To hammer his point home, Jude reaches backward across the centuries. He bypasses the plains of Moab. He bypasses the mourning Israelites. He goes straight to the desolate ridge where the gravedigger worked alone. But he does not quote Deuteronomy. He drops a jagged fragment of history that the Old Testament left completely off the page. Watch what the text does. Jude chapter 1, verse 9. In the King James reads, "Yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, The Lord rebuke thee." Read that again. A dispute over a corpse. Suddenly, the lonely death of the prophet is not a quiet burial. The mountain was not empty. While 2 million people wept on the plains below, an invisible, terrifying confrontation was unfolding over the dead flesh of the lawgiver. The highest-ranking warrior in the angelic host and the adversary himself were locked in combat over human bones. Picture the scene. The physical body of Moses is lying in the dust. The devil is standing over it. But this is not a primitive tug-of-war. Look at the Greek word Jude uses for disputed. The word is diakrinomenos. It does not mean a physical brawl. It is a strictly legal term. It means to separate, to pass judgment, to litigate a claim in a court of law. The devil is acting as a prosecutor. He is not trying to steal the body in the dark. He is arguing that he has a binding, legal right to own it. I offer it as that. One tradition's record, recognized and anchored by the New Testament itself. Jude expects his 1st century readers to already know this story. He drops the terrifying image of an archangel and a devil litigating over a grave as established, understood history. But if you scour Genesis to Malachi, you will never find this scene. The canonical Old Testament is completely silent. The Hebrew scriptures tell us God buried the man, but they never mention Michael, the devil, or a cosmic lawsuit over the flesh. Where did Jude get this? The early church fathers knew: Origen, Clement of Alexandria, and Didymus the Blind. All recorded that Jude was quoting directly from a specific, ancient Jewish scroll, a book that was widely read in the Second Temple period but eventually slipped into the shadows, preserved only in fading fragments by later scribes. A book entirely dedicated to the final hours of the prophet's life. One corpse, two ancient beings. A legal war in the high places. A dark legal battle raged over the physical remains of the greatest prophet on a lonely mountain. To read the devil's actual argument, we must open the forgotten apocryphal text Jude held in his hands. What terrifying sin did the adversary drag out of the prophet's past to legally claim his dead flesh? The breath finally stops in the lungs of the prophet on the ridge of Mount Nebo. The valley in the land of Moab is waiting. Michael the archangel steps into the physical dirt to carry out the divine burial command, but an entity steps out of the unseen realm to block his path. Picture the scene. This is not a mythic clash of swords and lightning. It is a high-stakes celestial tribunal. The text Jude was quoting from is known to history as the Assumption of Moses, an ancient Jewish writing recognized by the early church, but lost to time, surviving today only in scattered fragments and Latin manuscripts. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. But Jude pulled it directly into our New Testament, forcing us to reckon with what it says. According to the fragments we possess, the devil stands over the lifeless flesh of the lawgiver and claims total jurisdiction. Stop right there. Why does the adversary think he owns the body? In the Assumption of Moses, the devil operates under a terrifyingly strict legal code. His argument is that he is the undisputed lord of the material realm. All flesh belongs to the dust. And because he is the ruler of death, the physical corpse falls under his absolute domain. Michael cannot simply take it. The archangel is bound by the laws of heaven. He cannot steal what the adversary claims to own legally. Watch what the canonical text does with this exact legal dynamic. Jude, chapter 1, verse 9, tells us Michael durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, "The Lord rebuke thee." Read that again. The highest-ranking angelic commander in the host of heaven does not dare to insult the devil. In Greek, the phrase is krizin blasphemius, a slanderous judgment. Michael refuses to overstep his judicial authority. Instead, he issues a formal, legal cease and desist using the name of the highest judge. Same phrase, same courtroom tactic. We see this exact legal protocol earlier in the biblical record. Turn to Zechariah chapter 3, verse 1. Joshua the high priest is standing in the heavenly courtroom. The King James reads, "And he shewed me, Joshua the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him." Verse 2 drops the hammer. "And the Lord said unto Satan, The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan." Two distinct moments, two high-ranking biblical figures, one identical legal defense. Michael is pulling legal precedent. He is stating that the adversary's jurisdiction over the flesh of Moses is overruled by the direct decree of the Creator. God spoke the word for the prophet to die, and God holds the right to bury the physical body. But the adversary is not finished. See the scene on the mountain. The devil realizes his general claim over all human flesh is failing. Michael is standing his ground. So the accuser pivots. If he cannot claim the body just because it is material, he will claim the body because of what the hands of that physical corpse actually did. He reaches back into the timeline, long before the Red Sea, long before the plagues, and pulls out a buried secret. Michael and the devil stand deadlocked over a motionless corpse on the ridge of Abarim. The adversary opens a completely different legal brief. citing a violent crime the lawgiver committed in the sand 40 years earlier. What blood was still crying out against the hands of Moses? The adversary on Mount Nebo abandons his general claim over the material world and pulls a single, violent act out of the Egyptian sand. He points directly at the lifeless hands of the prophet lying in the dirt of Moab. Those hands, the devil argues, are stained with unatoned blood. Picture it. Turn back the timeline to Exodus chapter 2, verse 12. Moses is 40 years old, a prince in Pharaoh's court, and he sees an Egyptian striking a Hebrew slave. The King James records the fatal choice, and he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Stop right there. This is the prosecutor's trump card. According to the ancient traditions surrounding the Assumption of Moses, which I offer as one reading and not as final doctrine, the devil builds a flawless legal trap. The lawgiver is a murderer. He took a life without divine authorization, and he tried to cover his crime with dirt. Sit with that. The accuser's logic is terrifyingly precise. Because Moses secretly buried a man in the desert, his own physical body now belongs to the Lord of the dead. The adversary is demanding the corpse as payment for the blood spilled in Egypt. 2 graves, 2 deserts, 40 years apart. Moses thought the Egyptian sand had swallowed his secret forever, but the accuser kept the ledger. Look closely at the hands resting on the limestone ridge of Nebo. They held the staff that split the sea, but they also choked the life out of a taskmaster. The devil wants the flesh because the flesh is legally compromised. Read that again. This is not a struggle over the eternal soul of Moses. The soul is completely safe. The dispute in Jude is explicitly over the physical body, the soma in Greek. The devil wants to drag the bones down into the dark, to parade the prophet's corpse as a trophy of human failure. But Michael does not argue the facts of the case. He does not deny the murder. He simply invokes the highest court. He issues the decree, "The Lord rebuke thee." The Creator who holds the scales of justice pardoned the blood in the sand long ago, and the prosecutor's claim is dismissed. Watch what the text does. The adversary is silenced on the mountain. The grave is dug by divine hands, and the physical body is sealed away in the valley. But the mystery of the corpse is not finished. If God only wanted to dispose of the body, he could have let it turn to dust in a second. But heaven fought a violent legal war to preserve it intact. Heaven fiercely protected the prophet's physical form because the Creator was not finished using it. 15 centuries later, on a completely different mountain, 3 terrified fishermen are going to watch that exact same body step out of the unseen realm and stand in the light. How does a corpse buried by God in the ancient dirt of Moab suddenly appear speaking on a ridge in Galilee? It is 1,500 years later, high on the freezing limestone of a mountain in Galilee. 3 fishermen are waking up from a heavy, unnatural sleep to a light so violent it burns through the dark. They are flattened against the rocks, terrified out of their minds. Picture the scene. The carpenter they have followed for 3 years is suddenly radiating absolute glory. But he is not alone. 2 figures have stepped out of the unseen realm to stand beside him. Watch what the canonical text does. In Matthew chapter 17, verses 1 through 3, the King James reads, "And after 6 days Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John his brother, and bringeth them up into an high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them. And his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And, behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias talking with him." Stop right there. Moses is standing on the mountain. He is not a ghost. He is not a formless spirit. He is a recognizable, solid entity. Look at who is standing right next to him. Elias. The Greek name for the prophet Elijah, We know exactly what happened to the physical body of Elijah. The Old Testament records that he never saw a grave. He was extracted alive by a whirlwind and a chariot of fire. His flesh, his bones, his physical form were pulled straight into the heavenly dimensions. Same physical reality, same mountain. If Elijah is standing there in his physical body, Moses is standing in his. This is the ultimate payoff to the violent legal battle in the letter of Jude. This is why Michael the archangel drew a line in the dirt of Moab and ordered the devil to step back. Read that again. The adversary wanted the corpse of Moses to rot in a dark ravine. The devil wanted the physical flesh as a permanent trophy, a monument to the murder in the Egyptian sand. But heaven fought for the body because the Creator had a future appointment written into the calendar. The physical form of the lawgiver had to be preserved, held in divine custody, specifically to stand on this ridge in Galilee. Test it the way the Bereans tested everything. Look at the architecture of the narrative. God buried the man himself, because he was the only one who could secure the flesh for this exact midnight council. And what are they talking about? Luke's parallel account of this moment reveals the exact topic of their conversation. They are speaking of the death Jesus is about to accomplish at Jerusalem. But the Greek word Luke uses for death is exodon, an exodus. Sit with that. The man who commanded the first exodus out of the bondage of Egypt is standing in his fiercely guarded physical body, discussing the final exodus out of the bondage of death. The circle closes perfectly. The hidden grave was not just a burial site, it was an armory. Heaven hid the weapon until the time was right. The war for the corpse on Mount Nebo was never just about hiding a relic from idol worshippers. It was a preemptive extraction to secure the lawgiver for a conversation that would alter the cosmos. But knowing what happened to the body changes everything about the day the prophet actually walked up the ancient mountain to die. Go back to the final day of the 40th year. The 120-year-old man walking slowly up the jagged limestone ridge of Mount Nebo. Below him, on the dusty plains of Moab, 2 million men, women, and children stand in absolute silence, watching his back disappear into the crags. When this film began, that climb looked like the ultimate isolation. You saw a man with perfect vitality walking up a mountain simply to expire, leaving his people behind, facing the expanse of a promised land he was strictly forbidden to enter. But you have new eyes for the mountain now. Moses was not walking to a quiet, lonely funeral. He was walking into a highly secured extraction point. The peak of Pisgah was not empty, and the valley of Moab was not silent. Picture it again. The moment his lungs stopped pulling in the thin desert air, the unseen realm tore open. The adversary was already waiting in the dust, holding a 40-year-old legal brief from the Egyptian sand, demanding the physical corpse as payment for unatoned blood. Michael, the archangel, stood his ground, refusing to yield the bones, matching the devil's claim with a direct decree from the high court of heaven. Same desert, new war. And in the center of that terrifying celestial dispute over the flesh, the Creator himself stepped into the dirt as a solitary gravedigger. God took the body. He carried it down into a hidden ravine and sealed it in the earth, locking the coordinates away forever. He hid the bones from the weeping Israelites below, who would have immediately turned the prophet's tomb into a bronze serpent idol. But he also hid the bones from the adversary, holding the physical form of the lawgiver in perfect divine custody for 1,500 years. The grave was an armory. The body was preserved for a midnight conversation on a completely different mountain in Galilee. I hold this as one reading, not the final word. A bridge built carefully between the ancient fragments of Jude and the bedrock of Deuteronomy. We now know why the grave had to be supernaturally hidden. We know why the devil's legal claim over the murder failed. We know the flesh was kept whole for the transfiguration. but exactly how the Almighty fused that grave into the rocks of Moab. So perfectly that neither demonic entities nor human empires could ever find the seam. That part of the map remains completely dark. The desert is still holding the rest. If you made it to the end of this climb, comment the word "watched" down below. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep pulling these forgotten apocryphal threads back to the canonical text. And send this video to one person who loves the Old Testament but has never heard the story of the unseen war for the lawgiver's bones. The man who spoke with God face to face did not die abandoned in the dust. He was planted there, heavily guarded, waiting for the mountain where his real work would finish.